Welcome to Freedom Motivated with Christina Whiteley, the podcast that empowers you to live life on your terms. Are you uninspired, bored, and unhappy with where life has taken you? And yearning for a life filled with purpose and passion? Look no further. We are here to ignite that fire within, to awaken your true potential, and to guide you on a journey towards absolute freedom. Join us as we delve into the minds of incredible entrepreneurs and freedom leaders from very different backgrounds with incredible stories. Be inspired by their resilience and learn from their challenges they faced along the path to success. These are the brave individuals who fight every day to awaken people to the power of self-responsibility and who inspire them to create a life they are absolutely in love with. Each episode will explore the concept of conscious income creation, building a business or creating a career that aligns with your unique skill set, purpose, values, and belief system. Discover the strategies, tips, and invaluable insights shared by our guests as they guide you towards making a living doing what you love. It's time to break free from the shackles of conformity and embrace the freedom that awaits. Are you ready to take control of your life? Are you ready to step into the life you've always dreamed of? Then welcome to Freedom Motivated, the podcast that will ignite your spirit and unleash your potential. Hey, Christina Whiteley here with another episode of Freedom Motivated. And this is a special episode. It's podcast number 4 of my 6-part series, A New Era of Leadership. And today we're talking about one of my favorite topics. Today we're talking about absolute ownership. And the reason it's my favorite topic is because it's one of the things that will truly help you accelerate your growth and process a lot of mixed emotions, a lot of things that you've been through, a lot of challenges, and help you use them as fuel towards your success. You see, for many years, I spent time beating myself up. I spent time being hard on myself when people were judging me and saying, I should have been better, I should have known better, I should have done better. And the truth of the matter is, when you take absolute ownership of where you are in life, where you are in business, where you are with your family and your relationships and your children, where you are in general is a series of decisions that you have made and habits that you keep. And what's cool is that those can change at any point in time. You just have to be intentional about it and recognize that they need to change. And so today we're going to talk about where you are right now and where you're going, how to use adversity and challenges and judgments, things that are meant to hurt you, as feedback to evolve. This is going to be your secret superpower, let me tell you, in business. Once you can remove the emotion from it and see it as fact or fiction, this is the thing that will superpower your success. And also to help you get to that next level of self-awareness, right? And that next level of self-awareness is absolutely necessary in leadership right now. You have to be able to see all sides and also surround yourself with people that can hold you accountable and show you your blind spots. That's just part of becoming a better human. And so I want to do a really quick recap of the last couple of weeks, okay? Because we're on episode number 4. But in the first week, we talked about mastering your mindset and gaining emotional intelligence. This is something that if you do and you focus on, it is the hard work, right? It is the work. It's the part of becoming more and becoming a better human and serving people at a higher level, and not getting taken off track by the little things that often we get caught up in, right? Like I remember when I first got into social media and started doing posting and started putting my thoughts out there, and we're being vulnerable or we're having disagreements with people and just personalities clashing, a couple of different things. Number one, we're not meant for everybody to like us. Some people are going to like what you put out, some people are not. But number 2, our communication, how we communicate with people, how we learn to communicate with people is really important, because not everybody communicates the same way as you. And so learning to communicate in different ways to appease different personality types, learning how to show up in a way that people listen and you gain attention, that takes time, energy, and effort. And it's not just about putting a post out there, it's actually about being thoughtful about the message that you want to relay to the audience that you're trying to attract. And so mastering that emotional intelligence, we're going to talk a little bit more about that today, becoming unoffendable and how to use those judgments and criticisms to your advantage as opposed to being taken out by them. Because like I said before, When this first happened, when I would have conflicts or when things would happen online, they'd take me out and make me question my worth or what I was doing for weeks at a time. And as I got stronger, as I healed my triggers and my trauma, as I started to self reflect, I realized that a lot of the time, those judgments are simply a perspective and perception from somebody else's life experience, right? We all see the world through our own filter. And that filter determines how we see certain circumstances versus how other people see them. And often we don't have the self awareness to be able to see how our past experiences have reflected our judgments. And so it really is about learning to see the bigger picture, taking a balcony view, learning how to digest information and spit it out in a way that is more positive, that is going to bring you the result that you want as opposed to holding you back. And as I started to do this work and became stronger and started realizing that I'm really only accountable for my own emotions, how I show up, the intentions behind it, right? I'm not responsible for everyone else's triggers. You're responsible for your own triggers. If something I say offends you, then there's some work to be done there. And we're going to talk about that today and how I've been able to use that to get ahead in the marketplace and how I've been able to use that to grow quickly in business. So learning those skills will actually help you compress time. So instead of a few weeks of being upset about something, it began to become a few days. And then it was a couple of hours. And now it's maybe a few minutes. Maybe I'll give myself 15 minutes to be upset about something and then move on to something else. Or maybe I'm not even upset at all because I can see transparently that somebody else is being triggered and this is their trauma to own, not my own, and it's being projected on me. That's a lot of information all at once, but we're going to deep dive into it for this podcast. And also to recognize that when you create boundaries, there are certain people and things that happen in life that you have to learn from and create boundaries, or they continue to happen over and over and over again. And I own those mistakes and I own those boundaries, even if they upset other people. And I see a lot of people pleasing out there. It's how we're raised, especially as women, to make everybody happy. But the truth of the matter is, you can't make everyone else happy if you're not happy yourself. And it takes a lot of discipline and a lot of intention to create something of significance. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. And the second way, we've talked about how to become a market leader by finding the gap in the marketplace that isn't being met right now and working in your zone of genius to give more than other people, to make you a no-brainer of a choice for people to work with or people to buy from. And then last week, we talked about what it takes to align your identity to your highest purpose, how to create better habits, have higher standards, and find the courage through competency, not just through prayer. Because many of us, we pray, I just wish I was more confident. I wish I was more outgoing. I wish that I could be like that other human. But what's really interesting is that that doesn't show up the next day or a week or a month or a year later. What happens is situations get placed in front of you where you can execute courage, where you can execute confidence, and you can choose different than you did before. That's how we start new habits, is that we realize the same trigger or the same problem is happening over and over and over again. When we're in it and we're having all the emotions and the feelings, we recognize that we're in it and we choose to do different. That's what growth is. And so whenever you're in doubt, what I can tell you is that action squashes all doubt. Okay. And now I'm going to get into today talking about absolute ownership or personal ownership. And the truth of the matter is, you are where you are right now in life because of your habits and decisions. The job that you have, the marriage that you have, the friendships that you have, the work environment that you're in, it's all part of a choice. And I had to realize that over the years. So I'm going to tell you a few stories in this podcast that hopefully will relate or might make you question some of the decisions that you've made and allow you to reflect on those so that you can evolve forward. And I remember when I finally quit my salon job, and I'll talk a little bit about that today. When I finally quit my salon job, my husband, the day that I quit, he said, do you know, for the last year, every time I pick you up from the salon, every time you come home, you've either been angry, upset, or disappointed by something. And he said, I'm so glad that you chose to do something different. And that hit me in the heart like a ton of bricks. And I thought, why did I not make this decision sooner? I've also left network marketing companies that I know that I should have left 6 months before. And I didn't leave because of other people. I didn't leave because I felt this guilt of bringing people into a business, of leadership and of trying to make it work for them when I knew that it wouldn't work long term and that I wasn't in alignment with that company's values anymore. And I wasn't confident in the integrity of the company. So I had to make a move because I could no longer work in that space. But I prolonged those decisions, and all that did was hurt people around me. So it's about recognizing what's happening in front of you, honoring it, looking at the facts versus emotion, and then making decisions quickly to pivot. And I'm going to talk about the systems in place that we need to have to evaluate and adjust course quickly in today's world. It'll help you skyrocket business. I can promise you that for anybody that actually takes this advice and puts it into action. Okay. And so really, what this comes down to is that every relationship, friendship, work environment, business you start, every experience that you have is shaped by your perception, by your life experience, by your personal filters, by your judgments, what you've been through as a kid, what you've been through in your adolescence, right? All your habits, good or bad, and every decision that you make brings you closer or pushes you farther away from your goal. And I talk to my daughter about this when we're teaching her about healthy eating, because of course kids love candy, right? And I just said, you need to understand that everything that you eat, everything that you drink either fuels your health and makes you feel better and stronger and builds muscle and builds your brain, or it fuels sickness. And not to say that you can't have those treats once in a while, but if you continue to choose those treats over time, it's going to lead to some health problems. It's going to lead to things that don't make you feel very good. And so that's the same for everything. I'll give you an example in marriage. If your marriage isn't strong or you feel disconnected from your partner, are you making the time to go on date nights? Are you making the time to say, hey, after the kids go to bed tonight, why don't we sit down and think about our future for the next 5 years and map it out? Are you having critical conversations? One of the reasons that we have made such significant moves over the last few years and gained a ton of success and opportunity is because Ryan and I sit down and we have really critical conversations when we have disagreements, when we see things the same way and we need to make a change. We often bounce ideas off of each other. We honor our differences, even though we can disagree sometimes. And we have the conversations that most people are scared to have because we know that even if they're uncomfortable, they actually bring us closer to understanding each other and they bring us closer together. And so if your marriage is not tight and you don't feel like you're connecting with your partner, are you making the time and having the conversations that will bring you towards that, or are you avoiding them? What about your relationship with your kids, right? Are you frustrated with them all the time? Do they not listen? Are they not, is parenting not what you thought it was going to be? Think about how you handle conflict. Think about the role model that you are for them. When you own who you are, a lot of the time, the behavioral issues that we have with our children are simply a reflection of us. And I know that that is hard to hear, but once you heal your own trauma, and while they're experiencing big emotions or challenges, you can sit calm and listen and honor where they're at, everything changes. And they also build trust with you that you will always be there no matter good, bad, ugly, right? That's part of the reason that Ryan and I have discussions that sometimes get a bit heated in front of our daughters, because I want to show her that we love each other enough to have the hard conversations. We also recover from those conversations. And then we come back around and say, I'm sorry, or this is what I actually meant to say. Now that I've had some time to reflect, this is the core issue. A lot of the time we take a little time out and make sure that the emotion that is coming through is actually the issue at hand, not something completely different, right? So it does take this self-reflection. Now, friendships, how do you show up for other people? How do you show up for your friends? Are you somebody that gives and gives and gives and gives and gives? Are you somebody that takes and takes and takes and takes and takes? Because if you're not in a relationship where both parties give, eventually someone is going to be resentful. And you can also have different levels of friendship, right? Like my inner circle is a group of people that I will give and give and give and give and give to. And then I have an outer circle that I love seeing, that I love spending time with, that I have a heck of a lot of fun with. But I know that if I spent more time there, I would give a lot more than I received. And I don't have time to do so. So you have to be so protective of your time and energy. And it's not to say that you don't do both. It's just how long and where and when are you doing that, right? And do you continue with toxic friendships? Do you continue with people in your life, whether they're friends or family members? Do you continue down that path, even though it doesn't serve you? Because at some point in time, you're going to have to take responsibility for it, right? If a certain parent treats you a certain way and you keep allowing it, or a certain sibling, if you have friends that treat you a certain way or don't make you feel good, why do you keep showing up to spend time with those people when they aren't advancing you forward and supporting you in your growth? You've got to take responsibility for that and make a change. Then you think about business, right? If you're not in the same spot, or if you're in the same spot that you were last year in business and aren't happy and you want to make a change in 2024, you're going to have to do something different, right? And business is actually quite simple. It comes down to the schedule that you promise to keep, the discipline that you have, the systems that you have in place that you're able to scale and redefine and constantly improve, and your routine. Where are you spending your time? Are you intentionally spending your time with the activities that move your business forward, or the ones that just feel good? So those are some things to reflect on as we go into this bigger conversation. And when we are constantly reflecting ourselves into the universe, we get back what we put out there, right? Like, we are co-creating every single day. Our reality that we see every single day is created by us. You don't get what you ask for, whether you pray for it, you manifest it, you ask for it, you meditate on it. You don't get what you ask for. You get who you are, how you show up, what you do. If you give a ton of value to the marketplace, if you show up in a big way, you will get that back. But if you are scared and unsure, you're going to get that back too. So you have to make a decision and only fuel your brain with the things that move you forward. It's a choice every single day to go down the path of listening to 15 minutes of world news or 15 minutes of a podcast that is going to uplift you and inspire you and get you moving forward in a faster direction or in a faster way, right? And so when we have these moments, hoping and wishing that things were different, that's the moment I want you to stop and ask yourself, how could things be different right now? How could I change the way that things are? How could I take ownership and responsibility, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's in a relationship? There were times, I remember, I'll tell you, there were times when, I had long-term partners, I had long-term boyfriends, but I would go on dates in between dating somebody long-term to find somebody else. And I wouldn't prolong those dates if they weren't somebody that I saw a long-term relationship with. And the guy that I met before my husband, I dated on and off for a year. The only guy that I dated on and off for a year. He was a narcissist. He was manipulative. He was, how people date people that have one or two bad things wrong with them, and they're like, oh, I can just ignore that. He had like 10. And I don't know what it was. I don't know the trance that it was, but I had that moment of like, I could save him, right? I could totally save him. And we all know that that's not the truth. We all know that nobody can save anyone and that all you can do is save yourself, right? And so in that relationship, I hit my rock bottom. And when I finally had the courage to leave and not turn around and go back, I said to him when I walked out the door, I hate who I've become when I am with you, and I will never feel this way again. And it was that line in the sand, and maybe you've gone through that at work, maybe you've gone through that with a friendship, but it was very painful for me. And it made me realize that I no longer tolerated that level. I'd grown enough and thought more of myself in that year that I no longer tolerated that level. And so at that time, I actually sat down and I wrote down a list of all of the characteristics that I wanted in a partner, long-term partner, all of the things that I valued, all of the personality traits, the looks, the likes, the dislikes. And then out of that massive list, I did top tens. And I taught women how to do this over the years because people would always complain to me that they couldn't find anybody awesome to date. And I said, that's because you're not being intentional about it. And by the way, I'm sharing this story because you can also do this with your ideal dream client, your avatar. You can also do this when it comes to hiring a business partner or hiring somebody for your team. You can line out exactly what you want, and I'll tell you what happens. And so I lined everything out. I listed it all out. I wrote it on multiple pages in a book. It was a high quality list. Okay. And I wrote down the 10 non-negotiables. So these are 10 things that this person must have, my top 10. And these are the top 10 deal breakers. Okay. And if that person that I went on a date with had one of the top 10 deal breakers, not another date. Okay. That's how disciplined I was when it came to finding my life partner. Now, you would think that maybe that would show up quickly because I was very intentional, but it actually took about 1.5 years for me to meet my husband. And when I met him, even at the time, I knew that I liked everything about him. I wanted to be around him. But I didn't realize the accuracy of which I co-created with the universe when he came into my life. And so it was 2 years after dating him, I found the book that I wrote all of these qualities in, and I went through the book, and all of them but one, him being tall, which really doesn't matter, all of them but one was on that list. Every single characteristic, everything I wanted in a compassionate, kind, thoughtful human being was on that list. Every like and dislike was on that list. And not to say that, again, we don't have conflict now, but setting that intention and owning it and deciding that you will accept nothing less changes everything. Okay. And so all of the experiences that you have in life lead down the road to where you're going. Although sometimes it's really hard to see at the time. And it really is important to learn how to embrace the journey and see it as it is. That's actually part of growth. And so I'll give you another example. When I was younger, I was in pageants. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, there are things that in your life that are in control, and there's things that are out of control. And so I'm going to be super transparent with you, probably more honest than I've been every time I've told this story. But I was strategic about when I joined that pageant. I looked at the people that won the pageant. I looked at the people that were competing in the pageant. And I waited till my grade 12 year, because most of the time it was a grade 12 that won. I studied who the sponsors were and picked my favorite sponsor, and ended up being sponsored by the firefighters, and was thrilled about that. There's a lot of girls that applied and I got picked. It was a really, really great experience, and I worked my butt off, but there was a couple of things that I didn't do. Number one, I took for granted who I was, the position that I was in, and I probably didn't prepare as well as I should have for some of the events. Okay. This is my local pageant. I also didn't win. What I was told by my sponsors is that it had to do with politics. This was a massive lesson in politics and what I could control and what I couldn't control. But I didn't care. I just felt really disappointed. I was first runner up, and I was like, this sucks. This is something I had set as a goal, and I didn't make it. Okay. 2 months later, my sponsors came to me and said, we want you to go to Miss BC. It's in a couple of months. And I said, absolutely not. I'm so embarrassed by this. And maybe some of you can relate to something, maybe you've done a speech in public, or maybe you haven't gotten a job, or maybe, the guy that you like didn't call you back. And often, I think about, what didn't you bring to the table in that process? And so they asked me if I wanted to go to Miss BC, and I said no. And then they called me back, and I said, fine. And so again, I had a few months to prepare, but I went to Miss BC. I didn't win. I was a runner up. Although I did win, I got the highest score on the knowledge portion. I got the highest score in the interview. I earned a scholarship, and I actually placed in the talent competition. And really, the truth of the matter was, it wasn't about the pageant. It was about showcasing my singing, because that's where my true passion was. And so I was using this as a vessel to put myself out there, to be able to sing more and to be able to network and possibly get a break, right? Who knows what's going to happen? We all saw the story of Pamela Anderson, where she was at a football game, I think it was, or a baseball game, and she got discovered. I was like, maybe if I do this, I'll be discovered. I don't know, right? Although now I know it takes a heck of a lot more work to get there, usually. So I go to Miss BC. I'm feeling really deflated and disappointed that I'm a runner up in that. And I start university in the fall. And my sponsor again calls me, Terry from the BC Professional Firefighters, from the Power of Firefighters. And he goes, we want to send you to Miss Teen Canada. And I was like, no, that is absolutely crazy. I don't want to do this anymore. I've learned about politics. This is not something that is in my wheelhouse. Like maybe I'm just not meant for this. And I counted myself out. Instead of taking ownership for where I was at the time, he called my mom. He called my mom and said, we want Christina to go. And so I get a call from my mom, and my mom's like, Christina, like, this is an incredible opportunity. They're going to fly you out. They're going to pay your tuition. They're going to pay everything for you to go. Like, this is a once in a lifetime thing. You should take advantage of it. And I still was a bit apprehensive. And that apprehension, I think, cost me the pageant. I think that apprehension, that distrust because I wasn't all in, cost me the pageant. But what's really interesting is that I flew out to Toronto. I had an amazing time. I ended up being in the top 7. I didn't make the top 3. And after it was over at the gala, after the pageant was over, the 3 judges came up to me and said, we don't know what happened. We pushed you through to the top 3. And I was like, okay, well, now I just feel worse. So something's happened. The corporation or the organization doesn't like me. And even though I actually earned top 3, they didn't push me through. And so again, politics got involved, and I learned, and I was a bit disheartened. But again, ownership, I showed up. This is the breaks. This is what's happening right now. And a couple of weeks later, I had this conversation with my sponsor and said, this was the conversation after the pageant. He calls up the organization and they said, the truth of the matter is we couldn't have a girl from BC win because we couldn't afford to fly her to all the events back east. And so she apologized profusely to Terry. She said, I'm so sorry, but she said, this is the breaks, right? I remember bawling my eyes out. I came home and I bawled my eyes out, and I said to my dad, I am so embarrassed. I am so embarrassed that I wasn't able to move through this, that I studied and I practiced and I became better, and I still didn't make the top 3. And politics, now I'm so jaded by this situation. And my dad said something that I'll never forget, and it was foreshadowing for what was to come. And he said, Christina, you will have your day to shine. He said, whether it is your wedding day, whether it is a huge accomplishment, he's like, I promise you, you will have your day to shine if you continue to work. But again, I was just lost in my emotion, and I didn't have the emotional intelligence to move through it and see it for what it was. I was also 18 years old. And so what's really interesting is a couple of weeks later, I get a phone call from the organization, and they say, in October, we're flying to New York. We're going to a Buffalo Bills game, an NFL game, and we would like you to accompany Miss Teen Canada and Miss Canada. We would like you to sing the national anthem at the football game in front of 60,000 people. That's what it was all about. I couldn't see the big picture, right? I couldn't see the forest through the trees. And so that was my end goal. That's what I really wanted, was the exposure. And I ended up singing at other professional events, and I ended up having credibility when I went to school for music in Toronto a few years later. And it was one of the most memorable things. My dad flew out because he knew that this was my moment to shine. He flew out and he was in the crowd of that 60,000 people while I sat in VIP with everybody else. He was in the nosebleed sections, and he's just like, I'm so proud of you for persevering, for going through this all. And what I want to tell you is, had I not gone through all of the failure, choked me up almost. I could almost not say failure. Had I not gone through all of the failure, had I not persevered and pushed through and taken responsibility and kept trying and counted myself out and made different decisions to fall back in line with what previously worked, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have had that opportunity. I wouldn't have had people fighting for me in my corner because I showed my character, right? And so all of it leads down the road to where you're going. And it's just really hard to see sometimes. But the good news is your habits can improve. Your knowledge, your wisdom can improve if you focus on it. You can raise your standards like I did after dating that bad boyfriend, right? How I manifested my husband is I raised my standards and I no longer settled for anything less. How many of you want to No longer settle for some crappy clients. Or maybe you've got somebody on your team you've got to fire. Or maybe you're in an environment that doesn't serve you at your highest level, and it might be scary to move on to something else. It might be scary to go into the unknown and create something that is magical because you're in your zone of genius and leave behind this comfort piece that you took a long time to build. But it's all part of your evolution, right? So I do the same thing in business when I level up that I do with friendships, that I do in parenting. I continue to grow and get better and commit to that growth, even when it's hard. So I'm going to give you an example. This time of year, many people are making New Year's resolutions, right? Usually people come in the beginning of the year or like that awkward week between Christmas and New Year's, and they start writing down how they want life to be different. Now, if you've been listening to me long enough, you know that I started this process of reflection and how 2024 is going to be in the last quarter. So September, October, November, I'm brainstorming, I'm creating, I'm looking at where the trends are going, or where I want to stand out, or where the gap is that I'm going to fill, how I'm going to reinvent myself, because as business owners, we are constantly doing that. We are constantly up leveling and providing more value and better, higher quality value to people that we can serve at a higher level, right? But most people set goals once a year. Okay, that's average. People that reflect quarterly, and whether this is you or not, that's totally fine, but I want to bring awareness to this because it will change the game in your life. What I'm telling you right now will change how quickly you grow and you learn. It'll change how quickly you improve your relationships. It'll change how quickly your business grows, okay? But when you start looking at goals instead of once a year and you start reflecting on them quarterly, it's pretty good, right? Most big corporations have quarterly strategic planning, and they go through it quarterly. If you start to do monthly reflection, and this is something that I teach in both of my programs, a series of questions that you go through, and monthly you reflect on the good, the bad, the ugly, everything that you can take responsibility for. That's how you can see a different perspective and grow quickly and evolve and adjust course, right? In these monthly evaluations, and you may have heard this before, it's quite a popular way to put it, but once I go through the evaluation, there's always 2 things you need to start doing, 2 things you need to stop doing, and 2 things you need to continue doing. And when you can recognize that for each and every single month, you can evolve so much faster than the people that are just looking at their businesses quarterly or annually, right? So monthly is great. Now, if you can do this weekly, if you've got a weekly checklist of things that you want to accomplish, and that doesn't just mean activities that you want to accomplish, but actual goals, bringing in clients, bringing in customers, strategic partnerships, collaborations, new ideas, whatever it is, whatever the system is that you're trying to improve, if you can look at this weekly and check off the boxes, maybe you make a list on a sticky note, whatever it is. If you can do this weekly, you become excellent, right? You start to adjust course faster. Like I said, in the beginning, it took me a lot longer to make decisions that I needed to make quicker. And so how was I going to do that if my emotions were getting involved? I'd start just looking at the facts, and I'd start just making decisions based on the facts and not on emotion. And so you become excellent if you look at it weekly. But if you want to become a master of growth, if you want to become a master of your life, of your business, of your marriage, of your family and parenting, okay, this is something that you can do daily. This is something that when I wake up in the morning and I list my 10 things that I'm grateful for, because gratitude is a common theme among people that are successful. They have a lot more gratitude than they do worry, and you can't have gratitude and worry at the same time. So I wake up and I do my 10 things that I'm grateful for. And then if something is kind of sticking at me and I'm a little bit frustrated, we're going to talk about that next. Then I give grace to the people I need to give grace to so that I can move forward in a bigger way. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about that next week, gratitude and grace, and we'll go into a little bit more detail. And then when I go to bed at night, I reflect on my entire day. I run the day from start to finish through my head, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. What could I have done better? Could I have received my daughter in the morning when I was exhausted and tired because I didn't sleep well? Could I have received her better and said good morning and had been happier? Could I have had better conflict resolution if something went sideways with either Ryan and I, or in business, or with my daughter? How could I have improved upon that? Could I have said something different? Did I need to create a boundary? Did I make a mistake by involving somebody in my world that never should have been there? And that's why this conversation is coming up, right? Where could I own this and where could I shift and change? This is how you master your life, is the self-reflection daily. And so how you evaluate will also determine how quickly you adjust course. And business is simply a constant evolution of what's next, of improving systems, of finding the gap and creating new solutions to new problems in the marketplace, and also your reinvention as you grow into the best version of yourself, because your long-term goal is going to shift and change all the time. And so the truth of the matter is, if you master one thing, right? If you master your purpose and why you're here, and you share that in many different ways, and you get better with time, with intention and focus, that's the thing that will allow you to make millions. That's the thing that will grow, but you have to have that long-term vision. It might take 2 years. It might take 5 years. It might take 10 years. It depends on how quickly you adjust course. It depends on how quickly you're willing to look and take ownership of your life and be able to move through it, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about using feedback to grow and feedback to reflect. And whether these are conversations with a friend, whether these are posts or comments online, you have to understand that feedback is not meant to hurt you. It's meant to propel you forward. And as soon as you can shift that perspective, everything changes. I remember having a conversation about hard work and discipline and dedication, and having it with a friend of mine, and she's like, you just need to change your energy and flow through it. I do yoga for 2 hours in the morning. I go for a walk with my dog, and then I go on and I do this and this and this. And I can feel myself getting anxiety, getting stressed, understand, like I'm a bit envious of her like lackadaisical life, but also don't necessarily align with her belief system. And I know that manifestation is not only gratitude for where you're at, but massive action towards what you want. If you actually want a huge outcome, if you want long-term sustainable business, if you want to build a 7-figure business, you have to do more than most people. It's not about aligning energy, although that is very helpful. But in this process, I was like, how would I ever have time to go to the gym and do yoga and go for walks? Like I have a family, and I had this little twinge of envy. And so the reason I want to talk about this is, if you ever feel a twinge of envy or jealousy, you can use it to your advantage, okay? And although it might be uncomfortable, it'll help you grow. When you have that feeling, and it could be in a post, right, where you're triggered and you're mad about something, why are you mad? Usually those emotions are there to help us reflect on a truth that we do not want to see, or something that we don't want to explore. And so what I realized in these conversations with her is she was living this beautiful, free, very lovely life while I was working my ass off in parenting. It made me realize, wait a second, I chose to have a child. I chose to have children because I desperately wanted to be a mom, and I wanted to contribute a positive aspect to the next generation. And I wanted to be an involved, conscious parent. And that's something that she's chosen not to do. And that's totally fine. So it allowed me a bigger way of thinking and to see things as fact versus emotion. I also know the results that I've gotten far exceed hers, but she wants a different quality of life. And just because people want different things in their lives doesn't mean that they're wrong, and it doesn't mean that you're right. All it means is that you need to own where you're at, and you also need to own the action that it takes to move forward. So every time you have these critical conversations, or there's something that irritates you in a conversation, I'm going to encourage you to take time to take a step back, to look at it from a balcony viewpoint as opposed to being in it. Sometimes you need a 24-hour rule. Sometimes you need a 72-hour rule. Sometimes you just need a month to figure it out. Like it's a growth process. But to figure out where you are in your journey and why it's triggering you, why it's a sticking point with you, what the facts are, and then work through it so it no longer bothers you, okay? The other piece of this is having trusted people, and these people are rare unicorns in your life. Trusted people. Sometimes you need to pay mentors to do this, to show you your blind spots, to tell you what's working and what isn't working, to give you feedback. I race for that feedback. Sometimes I lick my wounds for a few weeks when things don't go the way that I want, but I race to hear the feedback on what I could have done better, where I can grow, where are we dropping the ball, what do we need to fill in the gaps with. When you can have those conversations faster and people can show you those blind spots that maybe you didn't see before, and you can see all sides of a conversation, everything else shifts. And so the other piece of it is often I will look to have conversations that are respectful and thought-provoking, not with people who are jerks that are just trying to be heard, but people that actually truly care. I will look to have conversations with people who disagree with me, who have a difference of opinions. As long as we can have respectful conversations, we can learn a heck of a lot from other people. Now, again, that is very, very, very rare to find those people that are not going to be triggered. You cannot have these conversations with people that have not done the work to heal, right? It can't be one healed person and one triggered person. It must be two healed people that come together, see all sides, take ownership of who they are, can converse in a kind and respectful manner. It must be that. But they are so valuable when you find these people. Keep them close, even though they don't see what you see. They see something different. You can learn a lot from each other. And so when I realized that I could take the triggers that were irritating me or hurting me or making me feel emotional and heal that trauma and adjust course, I could choose different. I could choose something completely different. And so I'll give you an example. This past year, in January, I had a video go viral, and it was one that I just created. I was on a walk. I decided to create it off the top of my head, 5 reasons that we moved to Mexico, and it went viral. It went absolutely viral. It's had over 20 million views across all platforms. And so what I've noticed is up to about 1 million views, you'll have a lot of positive interaction. You'll have a lot of people supporting you. After 1 million views, it is a free-for-all, and you are going to get many, many, many different opinions. There's also a lot of hurt people out there. There's a lot of people that are in victim mentality, and you may or may not have heard me say this before, but I would rather be a victor of my life and choose to be a victor of my life than choose to be a victim of my circumstance. Most people don't realize they're choosing to be a victim. Most people would rather blame others for their lack than take full ownership and responsibility, absolute ownership of their lives, who they are, where they're at, and then do something about it. It's so much easier to blame. And I saw that in January. I saw that there was a lot of people out there that were hateful, that were racist, that were not supportive, that said, you should leave the country, you should go home, you shouldn't be there, you're bringing your Canadian and US dollars there, and you have no business taking over these people's land. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, we need to start talking more about macroeconomics and socioeconomics and global policies and like how the way of the world is, because things are changing so quickly. But there was a lot of people in victim mentality. And what was really interesting to me is that it was a certain demographic with very little life experience, most of them from the US, not living in Mexico. It was, everybody has an opinion right now. And this is why people are scared to put themselves out there. They're scared of the judgment that they will face. But can I tell you that judgment means nothing, right? Other people's opinions are none of your business. It's how they see the world, not how you see the world or how you should see yourself. And so, although I will tell you, this was one of my biggest overcomings, it took me about a month of counseling, of talking to people like I was just speaking of, the trusted people that, you know, can talk about your blind spots. It took time thinking about how to communicate and how to show up better and you know, maybe not come across as arrogant or better than, but educating, right? And that was never my intention, but it also gave me some very valid feedback on how to show up. It also helped me evaluate if I wanted to put my daughter on social media. A lot of people worry about putting their kids on social media and showing their face on social media. And I had a lot of questions. You know, I'm very grateful for the circle that I do have, people that are experts in their field. And when you go down the line of, you know, should I not put my kid on social media? Should I put my kid on social media? The truth of the matter is, when you read all the facts, you would rather have your kids known than not known. If something bad happens to them, the more people who know what your kid looks like, who they are, what they sound like, the faster your chances are of finding them. So I actually, through all of this adversity, through these challenges where people were saying the cartel are going to get you, they'll come after your family, I had to do some deep reflecting on, did I just make a massive mistake by putting myself out there? Did I actually put my family's life in danger? And the truth of the matter is, I didn't. I didn't. When I could filter that information and I could see it for exactly what it was, I started to realize that there is no skipping that piece of growth, right? When you start to lead, when you put yourself out there, when you are doing things that are not popular before they're popular, when you have an opinion and it's not mainstream, or you're creating something new and reinventing something new, a lot of the times there's going to be pushback. And when you create big success, when you have significant impact, you will constantly face this. And I remember when it first happened, and I said to one of my business mentors, I said, like, when does this stop? And they're like, I'd love to tell you that it stops, but it doesn't. You have to continue to push through it. You will always have negative feedback. You are now breaking through. And actually, it's a sign of a massive breakthrough. All of these little challenges that like keep coming up, it's a sign of a massive breakthrough. And had I taken a back seat, had I decided not to post about this anymore, not to talk about it anymore, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to have international recognition. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to write for the Mexico News Daily that goes out to 1 million expats worldwide, people that want to move here and tell our story. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be in the UK Mirror and had that showcased. I wouldn't have had the opportunity to connect with thousands of people online that saw the world the same way that I did and wanted to be a part of our journey. And so you have to understand that when you put yourself out there wholeheartedly, you are going to get feedback that is not great. But when you learn how to filter it, and by the way, there are times, right? There are times that I get a comment and I'll go to my husband and said, how could I have said this differently? And he's like, you couldn't have, this person is crazy. I'm like, no, but if this person wasn't crazy, how could I have said this differently that maybe they would have received it differently? And he's like, you can't. This is just how they show up in the world. And so there are times that that's the conversation and we just swat those comments away. We don't care about those comments and we move forward. And then there are times where I reflect on how I could have communicated that differently, how I could get better, right? Maybe I have a limiting belief that I'm not seeing right now, or I'm self-sabotaging in a way that isn't helpful to grow my business or my following or my connection and trust with my audience. But when you learn to see all sides and you learn to recognize your triggers and improve your communication, it helps you set boundaries. And by the way, block anybody that is disrespectful, block anybody that threatens you. If you are out there as a creator, you're out there as somebody running a business, you're out there as somebody putting yourself out there, and there are rude, disrespectful, or hurtful people. My mom always said, hurt people, hurt people. That hasn't changed, right? But healed people, heal people. So if you can go through this process and really rid your social media of anybody that is really not making you feel good, you have every right to do that, okay? Because people are using you to find significance as opposed to finding their own significance and purpose, okay? So don't be scared to do that, because this victim mentality runs rampant. And really what it comes down to is taking absolute ownership of who you are and where you're at to move the needle forward, okay? And so when we learn how to develop emotional intelligence and become unoffendable, when people can't hurt us with their words, right? It doesn't mean that you don't care. It means that you can filter the information and use it to learn from, or discard it when you consider when you consider the source. That's all. It's a filter system. And I'm telling you, if you can master that, everything will change. And the other piece of absolute ownership is you can't play the blame game at all. You cannot play the blame game in this state of ownership. You use reflection to move the needle forward and intentionally create the life that you want. You use the tough stuff to get better instead of letting it beat you up. And you learn how to reframe it. This is what it will take in this new era of leadership to outwit and outlast everybody else. Because again, I can see it in people's social media posts. I can see it in their conversations. the trauma that they have not healed on their own comes forth in all of these conversations, and it's transparent in what they post. And if you don't take responsibility for that and grow from it, it will always hold you back. Those limiting things that you're not willing to face, those are the things that are holding you back from the next level of your life. And no one is coming to save you. No one. Instead, you have to save yourself, right? I cannot motivate anybody. All I can do is live intentionally, convicted with my values, and inspire other people to do the same. So you need to feel empowered to learn more. And you can study trends like anybody else. You can study history and understand these cycles, these debt cycles, recession cycles, government, how all of this works. You can't change those things, but you can start to make more educated decisions moving forward. Same when it comes to financial literacy, right? Financial literacy, learning how to make money and how to create wealth is what creates wealth. It's not working harder, it's working smart and figuring out how to master your purpose. And what I can tell you in the grand scheme of things is people only regret the decisions that they make without intention. Right? If you're following the masses or you're doing something because you're expected to, or because you're trying to people please, that's where people get resentful. It's easier to roll through challenge when you know all angles and you've committed to seeing through your long-term vision. But you cannot do that without absolute ownership of your life, without taking the blame out of it. We have to stop being victims of our circumstance and things that we cannot change and start being victors of our life and making decisions to move ourselves forward. And then learning as fast as possible from the diversity, from the adversity, from the conflict, from the challenges, and surrounding yourself with very few good humans who want the very best for you all the time, not just when it benefits them, but actually want to be good humans. I heard Elon Musk say that the other day. You know, there's so many people out there wanting to look like they're good humans, but very few people out there truly becoming good humans. To lead in this new era, you must become all that you're meant to be and take full responsibility for where you're at right now. That will change the game. I am so excited that you were here for this episode. If you haven't watched the first 3, go back and watch them, share them with your friends, share them with a team member, coworker, anybody that you think would benefit from this. If you are interested, I have a free workshop. They will be in the show notes of this episode. And I have a free workshop that's coming January 15th called Unbreakable Business, Impact Accelerated. I would love to have you there. I'd love to help show you what you can create in 2024, despite all the challenges, despite all the things that could go wrong. Let's start focusing and taking responsibility for where we're at right now and move the needle forward, because each and every one of you are capable of doing that. And it comes down to, what are you willing to reflect upon and change to get a different result? Again, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you again for part 5 next week. And have a great week. Thank you so much. Bye for now. Thank you for tuning in to another inspiring episode of Freedom Motivated with your host, me, Christina Whiteley. We hope that the stories we've shared today have sparked a fire within you and ignited your passion for living life on your terms. Remember, true freedom lies in the choices we make and the actions we take. So go out there and embrace your journey. Take the leap of faith, believe in yourself, and never settle for less than what you deserve. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the Freedom Motivated podcast and never miss out on our upcoming interviews with more incredible entrepreneurs and freedom leaders. Be bold, be brave, be disruptive. You are capable of things far beyond your wildest dreams if you just have the courage to go for it. Thank you for being a part of this incredible community. Until next time, may you always be driven by the desire for freedom and motivated to make your dreams a reality.